In March 2025, the University of Minnesota became one of roughly 140 colleges nationwide to adopt an institutional neutrality policy, restricting official statements on matters of public concern. This reflects a broader national trend, as universities seek refuge in neutrality amid contentious debates over campus speech, anti-Semitism, and political activism. Media coverage has typically presented the issue in stark terms: institutional neutrality versus partisan advocacy. Yet this framing fundamentally misses the point, obscuring a deeper and more significant question. Should universities centralize speech under administrative control, or embrace pluralism, enabling diverse groups within their communities to speak freely and independently? Critics of higher education, notably former President Trump and his political allies, have highlighted a legitimate issue. Universities sometimes alienate the public when they present contested academic theories or political positions as unquestionable truths. When institutions presume an exclusive claim to intellectual authority, assuming the mantle of guardianship, they risk appearing arrogant or ideological, diminishing public trust and weakening their own credibility. Such ideological overreach has rightly drawn criticism from across the political spectrum, underscoring the perils of top-down institutional orthodoxy. However, the proposed remedy, mandating institutional silence, does not solve the problem. It merely creates another. Institutional neutrality policies, while appearing impartial, effectively centralize control over campus speech. Rather than democratizing expression, these policies vest administrators with broad authority to determine what speech aligns with the institution's mission, paradoxically increasing administrative power. Far from neutralizing controversy, enforced silence can deepen tensions, fueling suspicion and mistrust across campus. True neutrality cannot be achieved by silencing speech altogether. Genuine neutrality must instead empower diverse voices and pluralistic viewpoints, offering a democratic platform for debate without privileging a single perspective. The solution lies not in suppressing speech, but in decentralizing it, fostering a vibrant marketplace of ideas where multiple groups independently and democratically assert their positions. History vividly demonstrates why pluralism, not silence or centralized control, is crucial to healthy university environments. Consider the civil rights era of the 1960s, when universities initially attempted neutrality by suppressing student and faculty statements on racial justice. At the University of California, Berkeley, administrative efforts to silence advocacy ignited fierce resistance known today as the free speech movement. Students refused to accept that neutrality required abandoning moral positions. The administration's attempts at silencing independent voices led directly to greater conflict and institutional paralysis, demonstrating clearly that institutional silence was neither neutral nor stabilizing. Similarly instructive were university responses to anti-war protests during the Vietnam era. Institutions such as Columbia and Kent State sought neutrality through restrictive policies on public speech and protest. The result at Kent State in 1970 was tragically instructive. Administrative attempts to control expression heightened tensions to the breaking point, ultimately resulting in violence and the tragic loss of life. This stark historical lesson reveals how enforced silence and administrative control of speech exacerbate mistrust, escalate conflict, and erode institutional legitimacy. Contrast these troubling examples with the flourishing campus debates of the 1980s and 1990s surrounding apartheid in South Africa. Rather than enforcing silence, universities largely encouraged independent voices, from student groups, faculty senates, and departmental bodies, to openly debate divestment and human rights. This decentralized and democratic pluralism invigorated campuses, cultivated critical thinking, and genuinely informed public opinion. Rather than destabilizing institutions, pluralistic debate empowered students and faculty alike, reinforcing democratic principles and responsible citizenship. This commitment to pluralistic speech aligns deeply with America's foundational democratic values. The Founding Fathers, in drafting the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, explicitly protected freedoms of speech, press, and assembly not merely to safeguard expression but to ensure vigorous debate. They understood clearly that no person or institution possesses a monopoly on truth. resilient truths emerge precisely from open contestation among competing viewpoints. Universities, as institutions dedicated to inquiry and learning, must honor this legacy by protecting and promoting a similarly vibrant discourse. When universities silence themselves or attempt to control speech administratively, they betray this foundational democratic principle. They lose sight of their primary role as facilitators, not arbiters of truth. Universities best serve society by creating open, dynamic ecosystems of ideas, nurturing diverse perspectives, and subjecting all claims, no matter how authoritative, to critical and democratic scrutiny. To honor these democratic ideals, universities must reject both top-down silence and imposed ideological orthodoxy. They must embrace a third-path democratic pluralism. Practically, this means decentralizing speech. Rather than tightly controlling institutional messaging, universities should empower departments, faculties, student organizations, and affiliated groups to democratically articulate their own independent positions on public issues. Allowing campus units to make group-based statements freely and independently acknowledges that no single perspective holds a monopoly on truth. This approach respects the First Amendment right to freedom of speech and assembly, reinforcing democratic accountability within universities themselves. A truly democratic university serves not as an authoritative voice, but as a platform that enables many voices. It fosters open debate, allows ideas to be seeded and contested, and thus ensures no single group, whether backed by ideological fervor, administrative power, or financial influence, dominates public discourse. The campus speech debate is not truly about neutrality versus advocacy. Rather, it revolves around who controls the narrative and how truth itself emerges. History teaches us that enforced institutional silence fails just as surely as institutional orthodoxy. Both silence and singular ideological dominance impoverish discourse and breed mistrust. Universities flourish only as vibrant, pluralistic spaces where ideas are openly, democratically tested. We must shift the debate away from false binaries and instead ask, who decides what gets said? Universities must reclaim their legacy as communities of free inquiry by enabling diverse groups within the institution to democratically and independently speak their truths. Only by embracing democratic pluralism and by honoring the lessons learned from history can universities fulfill their enduring promise as dynamic institutions of genuine freedom, open inquiry, and robust democratic debate.